goals. That goes with the pattern of the game so far this year.
There is the whistle, it's all over, and Galway are through to the All-Ireland final for the first time in 21 years. He was there in 2001 as a player, as a fantastic player, and now he's led his team back to the final against Kerry or Dublin.
The goal at 4, they are surely in the All-Ireland final. There can hardly be any more time left. There isn't. Kerry, with the last kick of the game, have beaten Dublin. They have beaten a Dublin team for the first time in 13 years.
So what a year the 2022 All-Ireland Championship has been. From Derry's first Ulster success in 24 years to Galway's rebirth and rise to a first All-Ireland final since 2001. Not to mention the classic of Kerry versus Dublin mixed in the middle and that Sean O'Shea point. Yeah, I'm not really over that one. Can we leave that out? Can we scratch that one? Nonetheless, it's been an exciting enough championship and one that ends on Sunday, the 24th of July, barring a replay, that is. That's strange, isn't it? The championship ending on the 24th of July. Still haven't quite got my head around it. Not too sure if I like it or don't like it. It would be nice to have a break from the GAA for a while, but at the same time, like, club championships are starting in Dublin in the next week. It just feels weird. It feels strange. But now this preview will be a little different to the usual previews, but sometimes different ain't too bad. And speaking of different, Galway in the All-Ireland final. Now that's different. That's a little bit unusual and certainly something we're not used to. I mean, we are used to seeing sides from the West in All-Ireland finals in Mayo. Obviously only one team from the West, but it is Mayo usually. They represent the West in All-Ireland finals. But now it's Galway, and the first time since 2001 they play in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship final. It's been a long time coming for the Tribesmen. A campaign that started with a big win over Mayo, one that mentally was huge given it was their first championship win over Mayo since 2018. They then had to see off Leitrim, which they did comfortably, a result which, you know, we all very much expected, let's be honest. And then they got the better over Roscommon, which was another big win for Galway, and one that maybe is a little bit underrated in terms of their successes this year, because let's not forget, Roscommon beat Galway twice in the league, and Galway in some people's eyes were going in as underdogs into that game, including me. In fact, I've pretty much wrote Galway off in every game this year, barring the Leitrim one. So yeah, maybe me writing off Galway for the All-Ireland final is what Galway fans want to hear, to be honest, because yeah, they were underdogs going in against Armagh in the quarter-finals, but they delivered just about on penalties. Obviously a bit of drama, controversy that was involved in that game, but nonetheless, Galway came out on the right side. In the semis, they were underdogs in most people's eyes, but there were certainly more people that tipped Galway against Derry than there was that Galway against Armagh. But they did eventually find a way against Derry and probably delivered their best, I don't know if I'd say their best championship performance in terms of quality, but in terms of doggedness, in terms of fight, they delivered a big, big win, and probably the biggest win for Galway football, potentially since they won the All-Ireland in 2001. Their opponents for this All-Ireland final, though, Kerry. The good old kingdom, eh? Kerry have been everyone's favourites each year since they nearly toppled the Dubs back in 2019, but it hasn't really worked out for them, has it? And the big criticism for Kerry a lot of the time down the years has been they're not good at coming through close games. You think of Cork in 2020, even Dublin 2019, the drawn game. I mean, Dublin were down to 14 men, looked dead on their feet at times in that game, but still managed to rescue a draw. You know, and then you look at last year against Tyrone as well. So coming into close games has been a worry, but as we know, Kerry very much have put that sort of conundrum to bed with that win over the Dubs. Well, so we think so anyway going into this final. 2022 has been a year of maturity, rejuvenation, and most importantly, discipline. Not in terms of attitude or fouls or anything like that, or indiscipline in terms of, you know, giving away silly yellow cards or red cards. They have been very disciplined when it's come to that. And they have been usually disciplined in the past at times as well. But more so this year, it's been about their defensive discipline and their discipline on the ball as well in terms of making the right decisions. Jack O'Connor's return as manager, combined with the addition of Paddy Talley as a defensive coach, has meant that Kerry have significantly improved at their biggest weakness, their defence. Just 2 goals conceded from open play in 12 games in both league and championship. Now that's not bad at all from Kerry, and clearly you can see from watching Kerry that the Paddy Tally effect is well and truly there. I mean, Kerry look very, very good defensively, and from a Dublin perspective, having watched Dublin against Kerry, the amount of times that Kerry turned over Dublin was incredible, and the sort of Tyrone-ness, shall we say, of this Kerry side is very much in full effect. Clifford looks good as ever. O'Shea has been incredible, and probably my tip at this moment in time for Footballer of the Year. Paul Gainey has shown signs of looking back to his best. Paddy Clifford has improved excellently over the last couple of seasons, and you've also seen Stephen O'Brien improve quite a bit this year as well. So it looks quite rosy for the lads in the green and gold, let's be honest. They seen off Cork and Limerick as comfortable as ever to win Munster before seeing off Mayo comfortably, and then the biggest win for this Kerry team today, a 1-point win against the Dubs in the semis. So that brings us to matchups, and how will either side line up for this All-Ireland final. So this was the team that lined out against Dublin the last day. So Shane Ryan in goal, Graham O'Sullivan, Jason Foley, Tom O'Sullivan in the full back line. Half back line was Brian O'Buglock, Tyke Morley and Gavin White. Midfield was David Moran and Jack Barry. Half forward line, Jeremy O'Connor, Sean O'Shea, Stephen O'Brien. And then the full forward line was Paddy Clifford, David Clifford and Paul Gainey. Now, as we very well know, Gavin White, it looks like there could be a potential injury there from what we're hearing. There's rumours most certainly that he won't be available and he isn't going to be out there on the pitch. So potentially with him injured, could that maybe see an opportunity for Paul Murphy to come in there? Maybe him and Brian O'Buglock swap positions and Paul Murphy plays here. I'm not exactly sure. Let me know in the comments down below for any Kerry fans who are watching there. Who would be the ideal player to come in there for Gavin White? That would be interesting. And obviously the last day when Kerry played Dublin, we very much seen Paddy Clifford more so operate here. Sean O'Shea sort of drifted more so around this full forward line and caused all sorts of damage. Obviously that's where the first goal came from. He sort of found himself in a position here. Paul Gainey was doing a lot of work around here as well and doing a lot of the unseen work. Maybe so much so that we're not used to seeing from Paul Gainey. We're so used to seeing him being, the main sort of marksman for this Kerry side. But he was doing a lot of defensive work, tracking back as well. And I think we've seen a different side to Paul Gainey's game this time around, or this year, shall we say. Stephen O'Brien, look, very, very direct on the ball, very quick, very pacey. He can cause a lot of problems, and you'll see him sort of drift back into midfield, collecting possession around here and then driving forward. And when Kerry sort of are looking to hit Galway on the counter-attack, if Galway commit too many men forward, Stephen O'Brien is one of the key players, I think, in getting the ball up the pitch, because I think he's a brilliant, brilliant ball carrier. Midfield sometimes can be a bit of a weakness for Kerry, and we will get onto that a little bit later. I'm not too sure if David Moran still has the legs. I think physically, brilliant on the kickouts, and he's obviously a great outlet and attack as well because he can kick from distance. But does he have the physicality or legs to keep up with Galway's midfield? We will discuss that a little bit later. However, I do think Kerry, with the fact that they've Jeremy O'Connor, he can obviously drop in around there. He's played midfield multiple times before. He can do a bit of damage in this position, sort of covering. And I think Jack Barry is one of the most underrated midfielders in the country. Does a lot of the unseen work as well. Does a lot of the dirty work. And I think Jack Barry is very, very good indeed. And yeah, well, I suppose that's the Kerry side. So let's take a look at the Galway team. So the Galway team then that lined out against Derry the last time out, Conor Gleeson in goal, Liam Silk, Sean Kelly and Jack Glynn make up the full back line. The half back line is Dylan McHugh, John Daly and Kieran Malloy. The midfield is Paul Conroy and Killy McDade. Half forward line, Patrick Kelly, Matthew Tierney and Johnny Heaney. And the full forward line, Robert Finnerty, Damien Comer and Shane Walsh. I don't think there'll be any changes to this team, to be perfectly honest. This was the side that obviously went out and got the job done against Derry, and I don't think there has been any injuries as such, so it will be interesting to see what happens there. The bench that we have here, Finian O'Loy, Billy Mannion, Desi Keneally and Paul Kelly. I do think Galway's bench could potentially be an issue when you compare it with Kerry's bench, but we will get onto that a little bit later. They have been the four most used substitutes from a Galway perspective in the championship so far this year. And I suppose what's interesting with Galway is when we seen them obviously line out against Derry, I mean, they were very defensive. They got a lot of men back. We seen Matthew Tierney almost dropping in here at times as a midfielder. You had Patrick Kelly dropping back. Johnny Heaney was nearly playing as a spare man in defence. You had Kieran Malloy very much, and Dylan McHugh both acting as the double sweeper in and around Galway's defensive line. And then they were very much leaving Damien Comer in this part of the pitch and Shane Walsh with a bit of a free roll. So it's going to be interesting, all right, to see how Galway sort of approach this game versus Kerry, because we have seen Galway approach games in different ways. I mean, a lot of the time they press up on kickouts, but if they need to drop back and be defensive, they can do that also, as we've seen them do so against Derry. You know, against Mayo, they had a very good mix of good defence, but also good attack as well. And the thing I like the most about Galway is that they pick and choose their moments to attack at the exact right time. And they never panic on the ball. They're very patient in possession. They wait for the right moments. You know, the only time I can think of Galway being very sloppy in possession is when Shane Walsh gave that ball away against Armagh right at the death. But to be honest, I think that was just one of those moments, a blood rush to the head, given the circumstance that Galway were in. So it's going to be interesting, all right, to see how Galway approach this. But I suppose what we'll do is we'll get both sides on the pitch and let's have a look at the matchups. Because as you can see, all the Kerry lads very much bunched up there. It almost looks like they're all fighting each other there, to be honest, while they're waiting for the Galway lads to get off the pitch. So we'll let the Kerry lads back on. So with both sides on the field, then looking at some potential interesting matchups right there. I mean, I think the Sean O'Shea one is going to be interesting, all right. Who is going to pick up him? Because I think you see with O'Shea and Clifford, to be honest, like I don't even think it matters that much who picks them up. Because you're going to see them do damage, you're going to see them have a great game almost regardless. But it is going to be interesting if it is Johnny Daly or if they put someone else on him. That'll be interesting. David Clifford versus Sean Kelly, I think, has the makings for a very, very interesting matchup. But I think the key area in terms of matchups for me is going to be the midfield. You've got Paul Conroy, David Moore, and Jack Barry, Killian McDade. Now, I said before, I do think the weakness, or one of the potential weaknesses coming into this game for Kerry, could be their midfield. Because I think Jack Barry is excellent, don't get me wrong. I think David Moran, look, he's been an excellent defender for Kerry, and he's, you know, I remember him in the 2019 drawn game versus Dublin, and I thought he was excellent that day. Brian Fenton barely had a sniff. But I do think, having watched him over the last couple of weeks, and like in that game versus Dublin, and even a lot of the time in the last couple of years as well, I do think he's quite leggy now. Like, he's 34 years of age. I think physically, look, he's a great outlet for the kickouts, brilliant at catching a ball. He can obviously kick from distance as well. But I do worry a little bit in terms of tracking back, getting back defensively. And I do think Paul Conroy will have his number, because I think Conroy is just a little bit more quicker. He's faster. He's better on the ball. And I think he'll potentially win that 1v1 duel, if we are to say so. Jack Barry versus Killian McDade. I mean, McDade has been excellent this year for Galway. I mean, he has been one of the standout players and one of the potential dark horses for Footballer of the Year, in my opinion. I think he's been absolutely outstanding. But I think Jack Barry does a lot of that dirty work, and what Jack Barry is great at is he's a bit like an engine, you know what I mean? Like, he gets up and down that field, no bother at all. And he'll be key a lot of the time for Kerry, because, like, I do think, like, how we're going to see Galway set up, as I said before, I think we're going to see them be very defensive. And we'll just drag some of the Galway lads back here. I think they're going to have a lot of men behind the ball, and they're going to try and frustrate Kerry, because, you know, it was similar to what they done against Derry, and it obviously worked to full effect. And, you know, I think if you go man to man with this Kerry side, you'll get absolutely blown to pieces, you know what I mean? If this is a shootout, Kerry are winning the game every time. You only have to go back and look at the last league meeting between these two, when Kerry scored, I think, 4 goals in about 50 minutes. They absolutely blew Galway away, you know, and it wasn't even a close game whatsoever. So I think Galway are going to have to play this game smartly. They're going to have to get a lot of men behind the ball and frustrate this Galway side, or frustrate this Kerry side. And then, you know, you're going to see whether it's Paul Murphy or Gavin White venturing forward here, David Moore. I think Kerry are going to see a lot of the ball, in my opinion. They're going to have a lot of possession, and they're going to have to be very patient. And I think that's going to be key for Kerry to win this game, is patience, because if they start rushing chances, or, playing dodgy passes or over carrying the ball, just things like that. I think that will give a lot of momentum for Galway, and the turnovers will be key for Galway in and around that half-back line. Now, to give Kerry credit, we haven't seen them do that this year. Against Dublin, they were very, very patient on the ball when they had it. I mean, Dublin had more of the ball in that game because of how Dublin sort of set up. But I do think you'll see Kerry have a lot of the ball, and they're going to have to be patient to try and break through Galway, because if they do rush those chances, I think they'll leave themselves a little bit exposed on the counter-attack. And a player like Paul Conroy in particular, I think is going to be crucial for Galway, because when they are looking to hit Kerry on the break, Conroy can hit a 40 to 50 metre pass. Like, he's a player who can kick from distance, and he's been absolutely essential for Galway so far this year. So I think a player like him is going to be key for Galway, getting the ball into Comer, who you'll see drift around here. I think these matchups here actually are going to be very interesting as well. Like Shane Walsh, is it going to be Tom O'Sullivan maybe that picks him up? I'd imagine so, and I think that's going to be a very, very interesting matchup if it's Graham O'Sullivan picking up Robert Finnerty. Finnerty done a lot of the unseen work a lot of the time for Galway as well, and I think he's been a great addition and a great plus for Galway this year. And obviously Matthew Tierney, who we've seen drop back into midfield and sort of be that +1 in around the middle. Again, for Galway breaking, it's going to be key. And I think another thing for Galway, when they do win the ball back and if they do get turnovers, they need to kick the ball, and to be fair to Galway, they have done that. But like, one of Dublin's biggest one of the main reasons I think Dublin were beaten in that first half, and where the game was lost for Dublin in the first half, was the fact that, there was too much hand passing. They didn't move the ball quick enough. They didn't kick it. When they started to kick it in the second half and they brought Paddy Small on, and they started going direct into Cormac Costello, it started to get joy, and that was obviously where Dublin's goal came from. So, I think if Galway can kick directly into the likes of Shane Walsh, into the likes of Comer, into Finnerty, it could cause problems for Kerry, especially if Kerry do leave too many men high up the pitch. Now, in saying that, I do expect Kerry to be disciplined and be patient and to sort of not push too many men forward, which is actually why I think this game could potentially turn out being a bit of a cagey affair, if I'm being honest. And to give Kerry a lot of credit, I mean, their forwards are just excellent, aren't they? The likes of Clifford, the likes of Sean O'Shea as well. Like, they're just so accurate. And the thing that impressed me the most about Kerry against Dublin was just how accurate they were in the first half. And, they did only have 5 scorers that day, and only 3 of their forwards scored alongside Paddy Clifford. But, that will probably, they might need a bit more than that. I'm not sure. Potentially with those 3 forwards doing damage, it might be enough from a Kerry perspective. But their forwards are excellent. And like, for Galway, this is going to be their biggest test defensively. You think about it going up against Derry. Derry offered very little in attack against Galway. It was very easy for them, I felt, defensively, because Derry didn't really kick inside. They didn't have too many kicking options. Armagh definitely caused Galway a lot of problems. And, the thing is about Galway is that although they have sort of shown their defensive goodness against Derry, they have been exposed a lot of the time defensively this year. And that has been sort of one of the main concerns I've had with Galway, is that they have at time let men in, conceding 2-16 in the end against Roscommon. Some of those late goals obviously going in. Against Mayo, they surrendered that lead late on. So there is a couple of vulnerabilities there for Galway, and I think that Kerry attack of Sean O'Shea, David Clifford, Paul Gainey, if he can get on form as well, could cause a lot of damage for that Galway defence. And that's what sort of worries me about Galway, is that they sort of do have a lot of fires to put out with that Kerry attack. And a key area for Kerry as well will be to get men back quickly, because look, we've spoken about how Galway have sort of adopted a bit of a defensive approach obviously against Derry, and how they mirrored what they done and it worked so brilliantly. But what we've seen with Kerry do this year is that we've seen them be defensive at times, and we've seen the sort of Paddy Tally aspect of their play and what a key role he sort of introduced for this Kerry side. So I think you'll see Kerry get a lot of men back as well, especially when Galway have possession. When they retain possession, you'll see a lot of men rushing back. And to give Kerry credit, they've done very well in the turnover in terms of the tackle in the half-back line. Their tackling's improved, their physicality's been excellent. Tom O'Sullivan's been brilliant, Tyg Morley. has done an excellent job. Gavin White as well. And you've seen Kerry almost like swarm around the attackers. So I think you'll see instances where Matthew Tierney gets the ball sort of here and around that half-back line. You'll see Kerry men absolutely swarm in over Matthew Tierney or Damien Comer if he picks up possession. And I think that's been key for Kerry. Like, we've seen them do that excellently over the last couple of games. And let's not forget as well, another key strength for Kerry, in my opinion, is their bench. You know, you look at some of the key attackers or some of the key players to come on for Galway. You've got Desi Kennedy, Billy Mannion, Finian O'Loy and Paul Kelly. But you look at Kerry, you know, we don't know the status of Gavin White, as we said before, but you've got Killian Spillane, Adrian Spillane, two players who've made big differences when they've come on. Killian Spillane made a big difference coming on against Dublin. Darragh Moynihan, as we know, is a very good option. Jack Savage is another option who could come on. Joe O'Connor. You've also got Stefan O'Cunber, who can't really get a look in at the moment this season, but he could be an option for the midfield if it isn't potentially working there. So again, Kerry have the plus in their bench. In terms of some weaknesses for this Kerry side, I mean, we went through some of the midfield issues, although again, I do think that's an issue that can be fixed, in my opinion. Like, I think with Jack Barry in there, with some of the options coming off the bench, with maybe Jeremy O'Connor dropping back in as well, I do think they can address that issue, and I do think they can overcome that if that is a weakness in the game. Another potential weakness for Kerry maybe going into this, they don't have much experience of breaking through defensive systems this year. You've seen Dublin were far too open at the back, man to man at the back. They were way too exposed. Kerry played through them in the first half with ease. Second half they tightened up quite a lot more, and Kerry struggled a bit more, but all in all it was very comfortable. Mayo as well, very man to man at the back, very too easily exposed in there. And obviously, you know, they came up against the defensive side in Cork, but obviously the level of them and this Galway side, for example, is quite different in my opinion. But looking at Galway in general, I mean, if they are to go defensive and get a lot of men behind the ball and operate the double sweeper as we do expect, you know, that will be a different test for Kerry, and it'll be interesting to see how they cope in breaking through that. Do they have the patience? Do they have the resolve? To give them credit, I think that they do, but I think that is definitely a question mark worth noting for Kerry, because we haven't seen, like, especially when they came up against Tyrone last year, they struggled breaking them down. You think back to Cork 2020. So that could be a potential issue for Kerry. In terms of some Galway strengths or weaknesses then, I mean, Comer versus Foley. I expect Comer to win that matchup, in my opinion. I think he's going to do a lot of damage in that full forward line. Could be wrong, could be famous last words, but I think you look at Comer's performance against Derry, it was exceptional, obviously scoring 2-2, and I think him going up against Foley, it's going to be a very, very interesting matchup. What I would say is if Kerry can win that matchup, I think they could win this one quite comfortably, to be perfectly honest. I really do. But I think Comer, I'm expecting him to have a big game. As I said, in terms of their strength, I think their midfield is key as well. Paul Conroy and Killy McDade, I think, have the best, have shown that they're, in terms of form anyway, they have the best midfield in the country, and I think they've been exceptional. And I think another positive for Galway as well is that they're very organised in their play. They don't panic, they don't shoot from ridiculous angles. We've seen them quite organised in their play this year, and I think the addition of Cian O'Neill into their backroom team, I think, has played a big impact in that. And obviously Shane Walsh is a key trump card for this Galway side, because much like Clifford for Kerry, Walsh just has this habit of producing something from absolutely nothing, and I think he could be key for this Galway side as well. In terms of the weaknesses from a Galway perspective, I mean, we said already that they've a lot of fires to put out with Kerry in terms of their attack. Closing out games has been a bit of an issue at times as well for Galway. We've seen that against Armagh. Although they have come through a lot of these games, like they obviously conceded, 2 late goals against Armagh. There were 4 points up in injury time, and somehow it went to extra time. They did still come through it, and they did show a lot of resolve and maturity there. Against Derry, to be fair, they were quite good at closing out that game, albeit they conceded a late Glenmurray goal. A couple of late goals conceded against Roscommon as well, and obviously against Mayo, they sort of nearly blew what was a 5 to 6 point comfortable lead going down the home stretch. So that could be an issue for Galway. Their goalkeeper is also something that potentially could be an issue. I mean, we've seen at times when Armagh started pressing up on Galway's kickouts, they did start to cause a couple of problems, and I do think There are question marks over the Galway goalkeeper, and if you see Kerry pressing up on those kickouts, that potentially could be an issue from a Galway perspective. And I think another potential weakness as well for Galway is that they haven't always started games the best, you could say. Like 21 minutes it took for them to score against Derry. They were a little bit slow out of the blocks against Armagh as well. So they haven't always started the games the best, and that potentially could be a little bit of a weakness there from a Galway perspective, because if they don't start this game fast and they allow Kerry to get momentum early on, they could leave themselves with a bit too much to do. And it is also worth mentioning that the occasion for Galway as well. I mean, it's the first time that they're playing in an All-Ireland final since 2001. I know a lot of these lads would have played in All-Ireland finals at under 20 level and at other grades, but this is a big occasion for Galway, and could it potentially get the better of them? I mean, that's the big question. We don't know. The occasion could play a big factor. I know Kerry will obviously be going in as favourites, but it could potentially play a bit of an issue in this Galway side. So ultimately then, in terms of a final prediction, I mean, look, I will be honest. I want Galway to win, and my gut sort of leans towards Galway. But having made this video and having gone through all the facts and having gone through sort of everything that I think is going to happen in the game and looking how the game is going to pan out, I just think Kerry have too much. I do. I just think they have too much. I think their attack is electric. I think looking at Clifford and O'Shea, some of the damage they could do with the Galway defence. I think you factor in the fact that Galway won't have come up against a Kerry attack as good as this. Kerry would have come up against some good defenders already, and I just see Kerry having too much, to be honest. I know I was kind of winding up a few people on Twitter here and there saying, Galway, we're going to win this one. But to be honest with you, I just think Kerry are going to have enough. I think their bench as well could play a big impact as well. And Adrian Spillane, Dara Moynihan, Killian Spillane coming off the bench as well. I think endurance-wise is there. I think Galway have a lot of physicality around the pitch, and I think that could play a big impact. And I think Galway on that counter-attack could be crucial potentially, and that could maybe be how Galway win the game. But I just think Kerry will know that. I think Jack O'Connor, Paddy Talley, very smart men. I think they'll have enough to see out Galway. So in terms of a score prediction then, I'm going to go Kerry 17 points, Galway 112. I think Kerry will just about have enough going down the home stretch. I think the bench will make a big impact. I think it'll be close enough for 50 to 60 minutes, but I think in the end, I just expect Kerry will have a bit more. So, yeah, very excited for the game, but I think Kerry will just about edge it. Sadly, I do hope Galway win, but I could be wrong. But yeah, let me know your predictions and your thoughts in the comments down below. As I said before, a little bit of a different preview for this one since it's a one-off game and since it is the All-Ireland final. So let me know your predictions in the comments down below, and do stay tuned for more content coming your way this weekend. There will be a live watch-along for the All-Ireland final of Galway and Kerry, as well as a match reaction and everything else. So yeah, do stay tuned for more content, more videos coming your way soon, and I'll see you all later.